Hi, you guys. It's Yaz, and today I'm going to talk about how narcissists dig their own grave. And they really do. They are their own worst enemy. People are always worried about getting revenge on a narcissist, but what they have to realize is that the narcissist will destroy themselves. Evil always destroys themselves. But I'm going to get into 5 ways the narcissist digs their own grave, okay? Number 1 way a narcissist digs their own way, they push their luck. A narcissist always wants more, okay? They're very greedy people. So, this is the higher the chances of them pushing for more, the higher the chances of them getting exposed and losing supply. So narcissists dig their grave because they're always trying to get more. And what happens is supply ends up finding out about other supply, and then the narcissist loses all of the supply. In other words, a narcissist may have another supply, and then they might get greedy and want another supply. And one of the supply ends up finding out what the narcissist is all about. And what does that supply do? They expose the narcissist to everybody else, all the other supply. And what happens in the end? The narcissist loses supply, okay? So that's one example of how they push their luck, all right? The other way they push their luck is narcissists always think the grass is greener with someone else, all right? Or something else is always better, the next best thing. But what happens is a lot of times narcissists push their luck because they think the grass is greener. They discard somebody or even do a fake discard where they, temporarily discard someone. They block them, but they have no intention of really getting rid of them. They're just blocking them while they're going and checking out that other supply that they think is the grass is greener. And then what happens is the old supply gets disgusted, doesn't want to be bothered with the narcissist anymore. The narcissist goes off to the new supply and realizes, hey, things aren't so great over here with this new supply. I was better off with my exes, right? That's why a lot of times narcissists bounce back to their exes as well, because they realize that the new supply wasn't as good a supply as their exes were. They were greedy, okay? They overplayed their hand. They pushed their luck. So what happens is, this is how narcissists lose in the end, because their exes, they end up losing their exes, who they devalued, who they, put down, criticized, judged. And when they went out there in that world and they thought that there was something better, they soon find out that their ex was actually a lot better than anybody else out there. So that's another way of how narcissists dig their own grave, all right? So in a sense, what they're doing is they're burning bridges. Now, I want to clarify this because somebody made a comment about the burning bridges, about what I said. It's like this. Narcissists don't want to burn bridges. Narcissists don't even really want to discard you. They don't want to ever lose anything. They never, you're like the old toy they have that they can't get rid of, but they don't play with anymore, all right? I know that's a terrible analogy, but it's the truth. You're like an old toy that they can't get rid of, but they don't want to play with anymore. And the thing with that is, narcissists, they don't ever want to discard anybody unless they absolutely have to discard them. So when it comes to burning bridges, narcissists don't want to burn bridges. Let's get this clear. They don't want to burn bridges. That's why a lot of times they'll make you be the one to discard them. So they could always say, well, I really tried in the relationship, you didn't. And they could play the victim and they can guilt trip you and make you feel bad for doing a reverse discard and all of that. So, they never want the shame. It's always your fault and everything. But narcissists don't want to burn bridges unless they absolutely have to. But they do end up burning bridges because, again, They overplay their hand and they're greedy. So what happens is they hurt people. They hurt people. What's in the dark always comes in the light, and people find out things that the narcissist was doing. Maybe, the new supply, things don't work out with the new supply, and they contact the exes and they start talking and they, compare notes. And now neither one of them wants to be bothered with the narcissist anymore because they realize that they're toxic and that the narcissist was playing the both of them. All right. So also keep in mind that greedy people never end up well. Okay. Never, ever be a greedy person, because when you're greedy, you don't appreciate what you have and you lose what you have. So, that will be their demise, because they always want more, more, more. They don't appreciate what or who they have. And the fact that they don't appreciate these people means that they will lose these people, because, a human being can only take so much. Even an empath can only take so much. You could just take so much abuse till you get to a point where you're like, no, not today, Satan. I've had enough. I'm not dealing with you. I'm not dealing with this abuse. They start researching, realizing they're dealing with a narcissist. They start seeing all the red flags, the gaslighting, the triangulation, the ghosting, the manipulation tactics, the mind games. And the empaths, or even whoever the narcissist was dealing with, gets to a point where they say, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. So the longer the narcissist is playing their toxic games, the higher the chances of them getting caught. I always use this analogy. It's like the gambler. He or she goes into the casino and they're winning. But the longer they stay in that casino, the higher the probability of them losing all their money again. All right. And that's just the way casinos are geared for you to lose. Okay. They want to keep you in there. That's why they offer you drinks and food for free. They want to keep you in the casino so you keep dropping your money in those machines or on the tables. But it's kind of like the narcissist, because the narcissist also is greedy. And the longer that they're greedy, the more people are going to see them for who they are, and they will get exposed. So, they get exposed in a lot of different ways. They get exposed in lies. They get exposed through their phones. Their supply starts figuring out, maybe goes through their phone. They see things they don't like. So the more they play their games and people start to wake up to the games of the narcissist, the higher the probability of that narcissist getting caught, the higher the probability that they will burn bridges, and the higher the probability that that narcissist is going to dig their own grave. All right. So like I said, you guys, you never have to do anything to a narcissist. If they've, hurt you in some way, just give them enough rope and they will hang themselves. They will hang themselves. Okay. Because they are truly their own worst enemy. Because of their greed, they overplay their hand, they push their luck, they burn bridges. All right. They create enemies. Narcissists also dig their own grave because they create enemies. And that's why a narcissist is very, very paranoid. They're always looking around to see, who's around. Also, they don't want to get caught with other supply. But they create enemies because they do people dirty. And today or tomorrow, the narcissist encounters the wrong person who will, seek justice or seek revenge on that narcissist. And the narcissist knows it. They're always worried that somebody's going to come back and seek revenge on them and, come after them in some way. That's why narcissists are very perceptive. They're always aware of their surroundings, who's around them, because they know deep down they have a lot of enemies. All right. So like I said before, you never have to do anything to a narcissist because they themselves are their own and worst enemy because of the way they live. All right. They don't live and do the right thing. They screw people over. So when you screw people over, you better watch your back, because today or tomorrow, you're going to do it to the wrong person, and that narcissist could have a real problem on their hand where somebody comes after them or hurts them in some way. And it happens. Narcissists do get clipped, all right? They do run across the wrong person or another narcissist or a psychopath or something like that they have, caused an injury to that person. If they're another narcissist, it could be a narcissistic injury where they could come after them, all right? So just kick back and let the narcissist give them enough rope and they will hang themselves, all right? Just by the way they live. The other thing, the other way that narcissists dig their own grave, they will get themselves sick, all right? Narcissists live in a fast-paced lifestyle, all right? They're drinking, they're drugging, they're out all night all the time. They're juggling multiple supply. And what's that going to do to the body? That's going to make them wear down and get sick, because your body can only take so much. And I want to bring up this other point that somebody brought up in the comments on YouTube, and they were so right. They said, and they get STDs, all right? So narcissists not only can give you STDs, they get the STDs and spread them to other people. But this is what happens to them. And that, I told a story on the podcast, one of my older podcasts, where a friend of a friend was married to somebody, and he went to a strip club for a party. He ended up sleeping with one of the strippers, and she gave him HIV. He came back, he gave it to her, and this is, the end result because of his lifestyle. Because he went with a stripper who, was sleeping around, and it brought it back to his wife. They were all in therapy and everything like that, I heard. But this is how narcissists dig their own grave. But not only do they dig their own grave, they will try to take you down into that grave with them, all right? So that's why you need to get out or distance yourself from the narcissist, because they will always try to take you down, or they will also try to get you depressed, get you anxious, ruin your mental state, waste your time. Everything with a narcissist is negative, all right? For those few bits of pieces of niceness they give you, or rare, tenderness or rare intimacy that you get out of them, the price to pay for that is tenfold. So it's not worth it, because narcissists will take you down with them, all right? So that's why you got to get out, because there's nothing good with a narcissist. They will also blame you for things going wrong. They will accuse you of everything. They will devalue you and just, strip you of your self-esteem. So getting back to the point of how they dig their own grave and how they're their own worst enemies is they will get themselves sick in the long run. I'm telling you, how many narcissists that I know have some kind of sickness going on, all right? They have things like sleep apnea. They have high blood pressure. They have, different health issues. They have a rod in their leg because they were haphazard and slipped on ice. Because they were living that fast lifestyle and all this other things. So I'm telling you, you guys, it comes back to them, and I have seen it. So you never, like I said before, narcissists are their worst enemy because they don't live the right way. They, like I said, they live the fast lifestyle. They create enemies. They burn bridges. They push their luck. They're haphazard. They could be drinking. They could be smoking. A lot of them could, end up in car accidents. A lot of them end up killing innocent people in car accidents because they're drunk or they're high or they're living that fast lifestyle. All right. So, they are their worst enemy, and they could also make people, they could take them down as well and take them down to their level. So that's why you've got to get away from these people, and remember that a narcissist, they always destroy themselves. All right. It's just, if you know the laws of life, you guys, it's like somebody that's always stealing. somebody who's always stealing is going to end up getting arrested, okay? It's just a matter of time. These are the laws of life. Somebody who abuses their body, drinks all the time, uses drugs all the time. It's just a matter before they get sick, okay? Because they're not doing the right thing. They're not respecting their body. If they're promiscuous, it's only a matter of time before they get an STD or, HIV or something like that, because they're, again, abusing their bodies. When they abuse people, it's just a matter of time before these people either discard them, abandon them, or come after them, okay? And they create enemies. So it's the way they live. They don't live the right way. And they're abusive. And they're abusive not only to other people, but they're abusive to themselves. And this is why they will destroy themselves. And they are, in fact, their own worst enemy, okay? So to recap, how narcissists, dig their own grave. They push their luck. They burn their bridges. They overplay their hand. They're greedy. They don't appreciate who or what they have. They will eventually get sick. They will create enemies, like I said before. They will also become addicts, all right? Because they're always looking for that instant gratifications. A lot of narcissists, because they can't deal with depression, they can't deal with anxiety, they can't deal with that emptiness or that black, empty feeling they have inside themselves. They try to, mask that and try to cover it up, or to, drown themselves in drugs and alcohol, to ease the pain, ease the suffering that maybe they've endured throughout their life, whatever it could be, their childhood development. They feel less than deep down, they're emotionally damaged people from their childhood development. And they're, they don't tell you that, all right, unless they're trying to get sympathy. But what they're going to do is they're going to constantly try to make themselves feel better. That's why a lot of them are promiscuous. They want to feel good. That's why a lot of them will be drinking and drugging. They want to feel good, all right? That's why a lot of them will have multiple supply to boost up their ego, to make them feel good. But all of this is going to be detrimental and will harm them, harm their bodies. And that's why narcissists always end up later on. It doesn't happen overnight. People always say, oh, they look so happy with the new supply, this and that. Give it time, you guys. In a matter of time, the new supply is going to see what they're about. And they, 9 times out of 10, they end up breaking up. Or even if they do stay with the new supply, they're probably warring it out over there. But they're not going to show you that. On social media, they're going to show that everything is great over there. So don't expect them to ever, let anybody know that there's trouble in paradise, because they try to hide that. Narcissists hide the bad things in their life. They don't want you to know that. They put on a front. They put on a fake facade to make people think that their lives are great, that they're with the love of their life, and they're wonderful, and they're rich, and they're doing great. This is all a front, all right? This is what the narcissist wants you to think. They're worried about their image and what people think. A narcissist could be miserable with the person they're with, but they will never want anybody to know that, okay? They do keep it behind closed doors unless they're running a smear campaign and they want to smear the hell out of that person, all right? So these are all the ways that narcissists dig their own grave and how they are truly their worst enemy. So I hope that helps you. If it does, hit the subscribe button, share the podcast. If you're looking for confidential one-on-one phone coaching, check out the link in the bio at askgaz.wixsite.com/thegameexposed. If you're confused, you don't know if you're dealing with a narcissist, what type of narcissist you're dealing with, and you need clarity, you need, advice on how to deal with this person, check out the link in the bio, askgaz.wixsite.com/thegameexposed. I have limited time, you guys. I'm just overwhelmed with all the work that I have, and I'm, writing a book as well. Also, you guys, check out my YouTube Everything, all my reels, videos, all's on real YouTube. You could do a search on YouTube and find out whatever you need. There's over 6,000 videos all about narcissism, whatever you're looking for. Covert narcissists, malignant narcissists, how they manipulate, how the discard, the reverse discard, the tactics they use, the silent treatment. I talk about it all on my YouTube at the Game Exposed podcast on YouTube. So go to the Game Exposed podcast on YouTube, do a search, and you'll find the reels on the topic within narcissism that you're looking for. Also, my TikTok is the Game Exposed, and Instagram, you guys, is the Game EXP123. And have a great day.